Caleb wants all this land because that was what he saw when they were scouting it out. And, again, he saw that it had plenty of food and other resources, and basically knew that the land itself was really good, even if, it might have been a little more difficult to conquer. But yeah, basically Caleb is saying that, yeah, it might be hard, but doggone it, I'm going to take this land, and this will be my portion. What's up, cool people? My name's Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. All right. So, Joshua chapter 14. Lots of land has been conquered, or lots of the promised land has been conquered. Still some left, though, especially to the east, it seems. Which would make sense if they came in from the west across the Jordan River. And last chapter was all about land being divided, or the land that was already kind of divided by Moses to 2.5 of the tribes east of the... Anyway. I'm getting east and west constantly confused as I say this for some reason. But in any case, still haven't figured out, the divisions of what was more recently conquered under Joshua's command. But anyway, chapter 14, here we go. The remaining tribes of Israel received land in Canaan as allotted by Eleazar the priest, Joshua son of Nun, and the tribal leaders. These 9.5 tribes received their grants of land by means of sacred lots, in accordance with the Lord's command through Moses. Moses had already given a grant of land to the 2.5 tribes on the east side of the Jordan River, but he had given the Levites no such allotment. The descendants of Joseph had become 2 separate tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim, and the Levites were given no land at all, only towns to live in with surrounding pasture lands for their livestock and all their possessions. So the land was distributed in strict accordance with the Lord's commands to Moses. So in case it was confusing at all how there would still be 12 tribes to split the land amongst, even though the tribe of Levi, which was one of the original 12 tribes, at least one of Jacob's sons, since they weren't getting any land portion, but Joseph's 2 sons got tribes of their own namesakes. They're really kind of half tribes, because the full tribes were, named by their names fell in line with the sons of Jacob, who was Joseph's father. But yeah, I guess, I don't know if it had to do with the size of the tribe of Joseph, or more so just because of, Joseph having a special hand in keeping his family alive during the famine that happened way back at the tail end of Genesis. And maybe his sons and family getting a special blessing because of that. But anyway, yeah. That's why there's half tribes being mentioned, but also the land division being the way that it is. Now we're getting into Caleb requesting land. Interesting. Anyway, verse 6. A delegation from the tribe of Judah, led by Caleb, son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, came to Joshua at Gilgal. Caleb said to Joshua, "Remember what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God, about you and me when we were at Kadesh Barnea. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land of Canaan. I returned and gave an honest report, but my brothers who went with me frightened the people from entering the promised land. For my part, I wholeheartedly followed the Lord my God. So that day Moses solemnly promised me, 'The land of Canaan, on which you were just walking, will be your grant of land, and that of your descendants forever, because you wholeheartedly followed the Lord my God.'" So, flashing back a little bit to well before they really started conquering any of the promised land, they scoped it out, and other than Caleb and Joshua, all the other scouts gave a bad report and made the people too scared to go into the promised land. So then they wandered around in the wilderness for 40 years until that entire generation that was too scared to go in all died off. But if Caleb was 40 when that happened, that would have meant he was 80 when they entered the promised land. Now, I don't know if he was supposed to be roughly the same age as Joshua, but you gotta imagine then they're both pretty old. But he's still raring to go, whatever the case is. And he was promised essentially the land that he and Joshua scouted out during that initial look. So he already knows that that portion of the land is plentiful, it has plentiful resources, lots of food. There's a lot to like about it. Even if it may be, quote unquote, harder than some other portions to actually take over. Assuming it hasn't already been taken over. Maybe it has. I don't know. We'll see. Verse 10. "Now, as you can see, the Lord has kept me alive and well, as he promised for all these 45 years since Moses made this promise, even while Israel wandered in the wilderness. Today I am 85 years old. I am as strong now as I was when Moses sent me on that journey, and I can still travel and fight as well as I could then. So give me the hill country that the Lord promised me. You will remember that as scouts we found the descendants of Anak living there in great walled towns. But if the Lord is with me, I will drive them out of the land, just as the Lord said." So Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave Hebron to him as his portion of land. Hebron still belongs to the descendants of Caleb, son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, because he wholeheartedly followed the Lord, the God of Israel. Previously Hebron had been called Kiriath Arba. It had been named after Arba, a great hero of the descendants of Anak. And the land had rest from war. Okay. So, it certainly sounds like that land had not yet been conquered. And descendants of Anak, for those who, haven't necessarily, for those who are like just joining in the Bible study and or weren't aware of this, that was, if I'm recalling correctly, the descendants of Anak were supposedly like giants of a sort. So like, these were all large, strong men that would have been defending these towns. Never mind the fact that, they lived in, quote, great walled towns that also just by that nature would have been harder to attack than towns without walls, or when it says great walled towns, I'm guessing it means that either the walls were super well fortified or that the towns themselves were actually also quite large. But anyway, Caleb wants all this land because that was what he saw when they were scouting it out, and again, he saw that it had plenty of food and other resources, and basically knew that the land itself was really good, even if, it might have been a little more difficult to conquer. Also, answer to my earlier question. So Caleb was 85 at this point that we're reading. So I guess it had been about 5 years since they, I would assume 5 years since they crossed the Jordan River. But even like the furthest back that 5 years could possibly be would have been, when they started conquering the kingdoms east of the Jordan River that we read about last chapter. But given the fact that it said a couple chapters prior, regarding all the northern kingdoms of the Promised Land being conquered, and that Joshua fought for, quote, a long time, or something to that effect, I'm assuming the 5 years was post crossing the Jordan River, and that was all the fighting against the 31 kings west of the Jordan River. But yeah, basically Caleb is saying that, yeah, it might be hard, but doggone it, I'm going to take this land, and this will be my portion. And it's kind of assumed, at least I would say, based on the wording down here in verse 14, that yes, Caleb and whatever armies were with him were successful in taking that land, especially because it then got renamed to Hebron, whereas previously it was called Kiriath Arba, based on somebody who was a hero of the descendants of Anak. Wouldn't make sense for it to be named after that when the descendants of Anak had been defeated. So yeah, and that was just the start of dividing the land west of the Jordan. I assume we'll be reading about that for at least a couple more chapters to come. But yeah, I guess that does it for chapter 14. Alright, so I guess Joshua's starting to divide up parts of the Promised Land west of the Jordan River, but we're not real far into that. So we know what's happening with Caleb, though, and his tribe's portion. So he's basically going to get the land that he sort of scouted out way back when they were first getting a look at the Promised Land to see what their plan was going to be, whether or not they felt like they could handle it and they were too scared to go in. That whole debacle right before the 40 years of wandering through the wilderness. But yeah, Caleb gets that portion. The rest we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. But anyway, as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell if you're on YouTube to get updates when I post new videos. If you see this over on Rumble, give me a follow there. Make sure you look down in the description either way to get info on social media pages and all that good stuff. and leave comments below there with any thoughts you have. So that's it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you soon for another video. But whatever the case is, till next time, stay cool, people.